Hello and welcome to another episode of PodcastDX, the show that brings you interviews with people just like you whose lives were forever changed by a medical diagnosis. I'm Lita, and due to the nature of the topic discussed today, Jean Marie will not be with us for this interview.
And I am Ron, and collectively, we are the hosts of PodcastDX. On today's show, we are talking with Brenda and Aaron Luter. Brenda and Aaron have been married for 23 years and live in St. Louis with their two sons, Josh and Alex. Josh was in a motorcycle accident his freshman year of college at Southern Illinois University Carbondale in April of 2021. His brother Alex just completed his freshman year at the University of Arkansas. Josh recently came home from the hospital in February of this year. Josh had a severe traumatic brain injury, including several strokes. Josh is unable to care for himself and is completely dependent on others for his daily care. Brenda is a former substitute teacher, and Aaron is a sales engineer. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us on the show.
We really appreciate you taking the time, because I know the time is very critical for caregivers. Brenda, could you start us out by telling us a little bit about yourself and your family, and could you tell us what Josh was like before the accident?
Sure. We have your pretty standard square family. We've got two boys, and our kids have grown up in the same house forever. They love growing up here. We live kind of in the woods, and Josh was a very outdoorsy person. He was active. He liked to explore. He was outside all the time doing stuff, keeping busy. He was very adventurous, and he loved to work out. That was his passion when he got older in college. He was also a great swimmer. He's been swimming his whole life on swim teams, including competing at the state level in high school. He was also really involved in AFJROTC in high school, and he was really enjoyed that. He was also had a fascination with cars and trains and planes and pretty much anything that moved. And when he was in college, he was a pilot. He was studying aviation management, and he always loved being a passenger on a plane until he got to fly his own airplanes, and he loved flying. He was a highly determined individual. He made friends easy, and he was never afraid to talk to strangers. He was somebody that everybody liked.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I only met you basically through TikTok. Your TikTok interactions with the public are phenomenal, and watching his expressions just melt my heart, because especially when you get him to smile, I mean, like, that smile is so genuine. You know that you're reaching him, so there's no question that you're reaching him, and I just love that, because that shows progress and that shows hope for the future. I love it. Thank you.
We love the smile too.
Aaron, I understand that Josh was going to SIU in Carbondale around the time of his accident, and you and your family live in Missouri. Was this a long commute for you to reach the hospital that he was taken to? And was it as much a logistical crisis as well as medical due to the distance?
Yeah, well, that makes things, that's a complicated question, because we were actually in California on our way home on vacation with friends. When we received the call, we were actually in the shuttle van on the way to the airport. And then, so immediately nobody could really tell us much, and we're in crisis mode trying to get home as quick as possible. Of course, there's no flights. So we had to just kind of stick to our original plan, which ended up being a delay in Denver for about 6 hours. At that time, we were on the phone with the Carbondale Hospital, and they suggested, due to the severity of Josh's injuries, that they airlift him to Barnes in St. Louis. So logistically, we actually landed about the same time in St. Louis as Josh was landing in St. Louis also. So in a way, this 6-hour delay in Denver saved us from driving to Carbondale in order to turn around and drive back to St. Louis several hours. And the time, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning when we finally got to St. Louis, at the same time Josh did, and so we basically went straight to the hospital.
Okay, all right.
And
But when we were in Denver, we're thinking like, do we pack up like a week's worth of stuff to go to Carbondale? With all that stuff.
Yeah, we were definitely thinking about all that logistically.
What were your immediate concerns regarding Josh's care, like right when you heard about the accident? I mean, as a parent, I'm a parent, and my daughter also had a traumatic brain injury, but I didn't know it at the time, so I was saved that stress. I can't even imagine the stress. What was your emotions at that time?
Well, we were just really in shock, to hear that news over the phone, and honestly, we really didn't know how severe it was right off the bat. But then after talking to the law enforcement that were there, and then first it was just trying to get in touch with somebody that could tell us what was going on, and then when we spoke to the doctor, that was in Carbondale. To me, it was very obvious right away that we had a very serious situation, and there was really nothing at all that we could do from 1,000 miles away at that point.
Right.
We were just praying that the medical professionals there could do the best that they could. Later we found out that he had been resuscitated several times at the scene. To me, I'm the one that spoke to the law enforcement and to the doctors, and I could tell the way they were talking to me that we were in a serious situation here. Josh was in a bad state.
Yeah.
So it was more than just worry and such. At that point, it was just such shock because we were in a hopeless situation being where we were.
Right.
And if I may ask, what were the extent of his injuries?
It's a long list. Do you want to read it?
Sure. It was so going kind of from the top to the bottom. The most pressing injury was a traumatic brain injury that they already had known that was going to be an issue. The real thing that got Josh from Carbondale to Barnes was he had dissected carotid arteries in the base of his brain, and they knew that they couldn't handle that there. Those caused a number of strokes and that sort of thing. And then besides that, he had just the impact injuries of the accident, which consisted of a broken nose, broken clavicle, broken scapula, a broken rib, punctured lung. He broke his wrist. He ruptured his testicle. He had a compound tibia-fibula fracture in one of his legs, as well as road rash, basically down both sides of his body. So it was a pretty traumatic crash.
And was that something that the doctors were able to prepare you for over the phone before you actually got to the hospital to see him?
It was a shock to see him.
Yeah, I mean, people can tell you that he's got a lot of injuries, so I kind of had an idea about what I was walking into when I went to the ICU. But the first initial view of somebody in that condition with
He had a neck brace on.
yeah, it's the whole thing. It's
Right.
all of his legs are bandaged up and neck brace, tubes going in, and his wrist is up in traction. They've installed a bolt in his head, which is a device to measure the pressure in his skull. So it was it was
A shock.
still in shock
Sure.
the whole time.
I'm sure.
And he went to the hospital first because we weren't sure of the visitation policies due to COVID and sent me a picture. And that's when I was like, oh my God.
Could only
His hand was in
imagine.
traction. And I'm like, is he waiting for you? Horrible.
Yeah. What treatments and procedures has Josh had as to date?
There's a lot. There's so many. He's had just so many surgeries. He had his wrist and leg were surgically repaired. His wrist had, what was it, the lunar bone?
Yeah, the lunar bone in his wrist was dislocated. So he had 5 pins in his wrist. He has hardware in his leg that basically goes from his knee to his ankle. He had a tracheotomy. He had
G-tube.
they eventually installed a G-tube for feeding. He had 3 stents placed in his carotid arteries, 2 on one side, 1 on the other, to repair that damage. Luckily we avoided the craniotomy because the pressure in his skull, the swelling, remained stable, or at least over several days, to a point where we could get that to come down. It was, I think, 4 days or so that they monitored that. He had pneumonia a couple times while he was there, just because of the nature of the situation. So, it was both, obviously a bunch of CT scans and things like that to go along with all of that.
Oh, yeah, right. How long of a period of time was he hospitalized at Barnes then?
Initially, he was there about 5 weeks,
Five and a half weeks.
Yeah, about 5.5 weeks. Most of it was in the ICU, and then the PICU, where it was kind of a step down
Okay.
from the ICU.
Okay.
And then he went to Rankin Jordan Pediatric Hospital, and about 5 weeks after he was there, he went into septic shock and went back into Barnes for another 6 weeks. And that was probably the most grueling part of the whole journey.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, because he was, I don't know if familiar with the word storming with TBIs. When they storm, their blood pressure goes up, their temperature goes up, they can't control their body. Sometimes they shake uncontrollably. And in his storming during that septic shock it was brutal to watch. It was just really hard to watch. And he would be in the ICU, he'd get stable, and they'd put him in a regular room, and they couldn't take care of him, and he was sent back to ICU. We were in 10 different rooms the first 4 weeks he was there, because they just couldn't find. I was like, he needs a step down unit, and finally he was placed in a step down unit after about 4 weeks, and that's what he needed.
Good.
Okay. And what has been the most challenging aspect of caring for Josh since he's been home, and what has been the most rewarding part of being a caregiver for your adult son?
Well, the most challenging is just really his lack of mental awareness at this point, because he's a good sized guy. He's 6'2", 170 some odd pounds now, and he's unable to follow any commands or make any intentional movements. So he's really dependent on us 100%. He can't really tell us what's wrong, although he can indicate that something's wrong. I like to say he's medically stable, but he's very his condition is really medically complex.
Right.
And so he keeps us very busy with medical or medicine schedules, feeding schedules, therapy regimens, and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's more than a full-time job, daily, just to stay on schedule with the care that he kind of needs, and keep him up and down and moving and doing the things that he needs to do. And then I would say, the most rewarding part of this is just the outpouring of love and support that we've seen from our friends and families. It's just, that's the thing that really gets to us.
Mm-hmm.
It's the accident and the kind of the sadness we have about Josh is really overshadowed by just the emotional outpour from the community to try to take care of us in any way they can.
Good.
That's
Good,
excellent.
Good. Yeah.
Those were the things in the beginning that like just broke us down, was reading comments and just people willing to do anything for us. It was just, that was so emotional, and in the middle of an emotional event that was already going on.
Hmm. Well, you have to put yourself in everybody else's position. You would do the same for them.
Right.
Right.
When you see somebody in that has so overwhelming situation, you want to reach in and you want to help whatever way you can. And I'm glad that your family and friends have been there for you. And it looks
Well,
like
we've lived here since the kids were little, so we've grown up in this community,
Right.
and
tight knit.
we're very involved with the school, so we just community just comes together.
Excellent.
Another thing I was going to say that brings us joy is that like Josh laughs a lot. He can just be like, "Hi, Josh," and he'll just give you a great big smile and a chuckle, and
Right.
he laughs all the time. But then he's also, even though he can't communicate verbally, he can also just indicate to us when he's unhappy or happy. If something's wrong,
Sure.
he whines or fusses a little bit, and we can usually adjust him or tilt him or something to make him happy. So
Right.
Good.
It's got to be frustrating with lack of communication at this point.
mhm.
It is.
I wish I could. We're always like, Josh, what's wrong? Tell us what's wrong.
Right.
Well, excuse me. Where I work in a healthcare setting, and we have some students who are nonverbal, and it's the staff having to get to know them to understand what's needed. I mean, obviously,
Yep.
being as parents,
Right.
but it's got to be a major change.
Yeah, even as his parents, it's still a guessing game for us too, a lot.
Right, because he was an adult taking care of himself before this. So
Yeah,
Exactly.
he was a very independent adult, taking
Very-
care of
yes.
himself. He was was determined to get what he wanted, and he was independent and moving on down the road
right.
as far as he was concerned.
Yeah, he was one of those kids that was never afraid to make a phone call to get something he needed taken care of, and he took care of everything himself.
Okay. Well, you know what? It may be that attitude and that positive spirit is what's keeping him going.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That's I don't think that's a maybe at all. It's that's what's happening, and as he becomes more aware, I'm sure that his determination that he's always had is gonna kick in and even help further
Right.
along the lines of his recovery.
Right.
So, can I ask, has the COVID pandemic, has it had any effect on the care he got? I mean, I know you're caring for him at home, but did that have any effect on?
It affects his care so much as just the complications of visitation restrictions, and
Okay.
like that one time when he was back for septic shock, that every floor had, like, even though it was the same hospital, seemed like they had different policies. It was just kind of navigating what they were. And at Barnes, you could have 2 visitors if they were under 21. So we kind of got lucky in the fact that Josh was under 21, but it had to be the same 2 people all day. You couldn't change out. So like if I wanted to visit him for 2 hours and have like my mom or his mom visit him the rest of the day, we couldn't do that because
Right.
we were there.
Right.
So it was just complicated
Hmm.
with the policies. And then when he got to Rankin Jordan, there was, ups and downs with COVID. So they changed their policies, like only adults or only 5 people, visitors had to be outside, just different changes based on the ups and downs of COVID.
I think one of the things that was the most, it was very stressful to be in that deep into the medical operation with so many COVID patients coming in to the
Yes.
hospital, because when he went back with the septic shock, he was placed, although he was in ICU, he wasn't in trauma ICU anymore. He was in medical ICU. And in medical ICU, the rooms were filled with COVID patients. And so to walk into an environment every day with a very medically fragile son around all of that, it was high stress.
Terrifying.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, really
That was-
terrifying.
that was when there was a very huge COVID spike. So probably the rooms were full with COVID patients. So I bet 80% of the patients in the medical floor were COVID patients. And our nurses would have Josh and a COVID patient. And that just always made me nervous. And
Sure.
Wow.
changing
Sure.
your
Yeah, yeah.
protective gear and all that. So
What are we bringing in? What's somebody else bringing
Right,
in?
right,
It's
right.
very stressful.
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah, and I guess the other thing that kind of put us, set us back because of COVID was getting legal guardianship of Josh, because
Oh,
at that point
sure.
he was over 18, and the court systems were not doing those type of
Cases.
hearings.
Right.
It had to be all done through Zoom. The court systems were very backed up, or may still be. And it took us, over 6 months to get legal guardianship of Josh, to where we could actually make legitimate legal decisions. As
Wow.
far as medical decisions go, they were pretty lenient on us at that, because, Josh didn't have a wife or any children or any other family members. We were, a happily married couple making these decisions jointly. So there wasn't an ex-spouse or something that was
Right.
disagreeing with what we had intended.
Right.
So that wasn't so much of a problem, but I could see if that was your situation,
Mm-hmm.
that could have been very difficult to deal with.
Sure.
that's
Sure.
one thing that I would recommend for parents is something that we never thought about, but we've done for our other son, is to have,
Yeah, there's 2 different documents that you can get set up: medical and legal power of attorney for your kids,
Right.
Okay.
when they go away to college in this situation.
Okay.
Because we did not have any of that in place, and so we were kind of trying to catch up.
and we immediately did it for our other son. I mean, no one ever wants this to happen to your child, that they can't make their own decisions on anything, but it happens. And that's one thing that I've recommended to my friends is, no one wants this to happen to your child, but things happen. And
Yeah, you need to be prepared.
Right. Right. You don't. Yeah.
Moving on.
That's what this show is for, so that we can share this information with others, and they can hopefully gain from your advice. Based on what we've read and seen on TikTok, your son has a very large following, friends and others. How do you keep them apprised of Josh's condition while still respecting his privacy?
Well, we're pretty open about Josh's care and his condition, and we have been from the beginning, because we really believe in the power of prayer. And we wanted as many of Josh's and our family and friends to think about Josh and pray about Josh as often as possible. So, it was kind of from the beginning, we decided to keep everybody updated as often as possible. We kept, we had a serious effort on our part, a serious decision made by us to make sure that we were presenting the most positive aspects of what was going on with Josh. Although it was a very serious situation, we made a constant effort to kind of shield some of the more private and serious and really graphic and kind of horrific situations of his recovery. But we've decided that the more people we can get involved, is the more positive energy, the more prayers that we can get for Josh, and that's just going to aid in his recovery.
we were doing written updates every day, and then once a week for a while. Then I started the TikTok just because it was easier than explaining in paragraphs how things operated. I just was like, let's do TikTok. Those are really quick videos, and they're easy for everyone to access. So
Right.
Right.
And
We started
we
that.
could put those in a link on
Yeah.
Facebook, or some of the various other updating sites that for people in Josh's condition.
Right. Right. You're doing a great job with that.
So,
Thanks.
um,
It's kind of fun.
It is, right? Yeah.
what, if anything, has helped you to work through the stress and the emotional challenges of being Josh's caregivers?
Well, we have a lot of support. In the beginning, there was just and then when I think back on it, it's like a total blur right now to think back in the beginning. But we were so distraught. We had people driving us to and from the hospital for the first few weeks, just because we were exhausted. when we first came back, of course, we're going on absolutely no sleep and from our trip and jumping right into it. So it took us a while to catch up on our sleep and figure out how to sleep through this when you just are only thinking about him. So we were in a
Right.
mess. We had people driving us to and from the hospital. We had people bringing us meals all the time. People call, text us, send us prayers, just left us messages all the time. When he got to Rankin Jordan, I had people that I was there every day, all day long. And I just asked friends, like, does anybody want to come to the hospital with me and just stay with me for the day? Because it's just they're long days and it's kind of nice just to have someone to talk to and go through your day with you.
Most
We
definitely.
also, yeah, we have great friend support. So that was wonderful. They just kind of carried us along. I even had a friend of mine say that she was going to plan my other son's graduation party and she did everything for it. And that was amazing that I just had to walk in and be like a guest to my own son's graduation party because that was when Josh was in septic shock and I couldn't have done it.
Oh my God! Wow.
So we also have gone through, we've done professional therapy just to help us work through some of the challenges at the time, just to help us get through it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
How
um,
how about your other son, Alex? How is he holding up?
well, it's the whole situation's been a challenging couple years because Josh was at college. When you go to college, everything kind of changes for kids. You change one friend group to another friend group, and Alex was at home that first summer, and he was having a hard time just processing. And we're usually home a lot, but we were at the hospital. Aaron happened to break his ankle shortly after Josh's accident and had to have surgery. So he was on disability, luckily, so he got to go to the hospital. And one of the great things about that is hospitals are very handicap accessible, so he could ride a scooter everywhere he went, and that helped. It was a mess. And Aaron had a heart attack the year before. We're kind of experiencing the trauma situation, I guess, for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've kind of, since COVID started, it's been really kind of a mess for all of us.
And so
Alex had worked through all of that with us as well.
Yeah.
And Alex was in a different space. Josh hadn't been home for a year anyway, and Alex was enjoying his senior year, and so as much as he could
during COVID.
With COVID, right?
Right, and so we just what we really tried to do is go to the hospital during the day, and then when we were home, we would be home with Alex, and we would try to make it as normal as possible. Whether we sat down and watched a sporting event, or watched a TV program together, or took him out to dinner, we just tried to make it as normal as possible for him because, like I say, Josh had not been home anyway from college, so him not being home from the hospital, if we tried to keep the talk about the days with Josh at the hospital to a minimum and focus more on Alex, because we knew that we were getting him prepared to go away to college too.
Right.
And so it was a real balancing act, to so much focus on Josh and his condition and his recovery, as well as focusing on a senior that's getting ready to transition out of your home as well.
Right, right.
So we feel like we've been in this crazy transition now for 2 years.
It seems like we're like, okay, new transition, okay, next transition, okay, next transition, okay,
right,
next
transition. Right.
Yeah.
But we never stayed at the hospital throughout the night because we knew that our mental health was going to be very important and our physical health. So we made sure we came home every night for a sit-down dinner with Alex. People always brought our meals. We sat down, we ate dinner together as the three of us as a family, and made a normal night, sat on the couch, watched TV.
Okay. Good. That's excellent advice for...
We actually asked him if we could pay him to mow the grass and run our errands and clean the house. And I get a job that summer to help us out because we were trying to find people to do all that anyway. So
right.
We paid him to do that stuff.
Win-win. Good. Excellent. And what keeps Josh's spirits up while he's going through all these therapies and everything. And what are some of the things that he enjoys doing now?
Josh loves people around him. When his therapists come in the room, he laughs when he sees them. He knows it's going to be a fun time. He recognizes them. He really likes things going on and watching things and watching the dogs. Like if there's nothing going on in the afternoon, he gets pretty fussy, but he just likes things. And he loves funny noises and sounds and just, or anything like that. And he just laughs and giggles.
Right. I noticed when Aaron was going boop, boop, boop,
Yeah,
boop
yeah.
on the nose, he got the smiles. At first he didn't, but then the smiles came. I'm like, yep. You got to keep at it.
So does he look at a lot of the TikTok videos and things like that? I mean, my kids are around the same age, and that's all they do.
Right.
Yeah. So he loves to hear his name. As soon as you say Josh, he'll smile, and he likes when people talk to him. One of the funniest things is when the dogs drink water out of their bowl and they lick it. He thinks that's hilarious. He just starts cracking up all the time. It's just funny. He just likes those.
Right.
He just smiles at anything silly. He laughs all day long.
So we're a bunch of goofs around here just trying to get him to laugh.
We walk around like neat.
Right.
Beep beep. Just like he's just like the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now that he's eating, he really likes to eat.
Yeah.
So
you push him up to the table and his mouth starts opening. Birdie. He's
okay.
Like, oh.
Okay. All right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we started with pudding and applesauce, and now we're progressing. We tried scrambled eggs the other day, which took a long time for him to eat, but he got him down and he's doing really good. He just loves mashed potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Always a constant supply of mashed potatoes here. And
we try to feed him when we eat dinner.
Yep.
And that's because we've always had the tradition of having family dinner together from when the kids were just little bitty. And so we just kind of have tried to continue that. And now that he's able to eat semi-solid foods like, pudding and mashed potato consistency, we just roll them right up to the table while we're having dinner and do that.
Great. So
And,
it's back to having a family.
Right. Whenever we say the same grace at dinner and before he goes to bed, and he'll be sitting there and we'll start saying, God is great. And he just has a big old smile and a laugh on his face because he recognizes that. And that's always just a joy for us to see him doing that. And then we say the same prayer when he was little, when he goes to bed, and even if he's asleep, and he'll just have a huge smile on his face when I start saying it to him. So it's just really great because that's a long-term memory thing that was enforced daily for his whole life.
Right.
That's wonderful.
That's important.
I wanted to ask this question. You said he was adventurous and things like that. He liked to swim. I also do volunteer work with an organization that does adapted scuba diving for people with disabilities. I don't know if that's something that you and your family might want to take a look at to see if that would interest him. We get people with disabilities, all various kinds, in the water scuba diving, and it's a great therapy.
Well, that's awesome. He's scuba dive. He's already certified as a scuba diver.
Oh,
wonderful.
Yeah, he might really enjoy that.
Well,
because they've got the full mask. Now,
right. And if you look up our organization, it's called diveheart.org. We work with children, adults, and veterans with disabilities, and we're doing research, or we're doing stuff for research to see how having people on scuba at depth, the pressure and all that, how that works with the body. So we're working with researchers, but from a therapeutic standpoint, it is absolutely amazing. And since he was a diver beforehand, that might be something that may be interested, that he may be interested in. Now, as I tell everybody that does it, it has to go through the doctors. You have to be medically stable to be able to do that. If the doctors find out there's a reason medically that you can't, then we don't do it. But if the doctors say medically that you're stable, then yeah, we'll get them in the water.
That'd be great. We're also looking to the hyperbaric oxygen
Yes.
chamber for Josh. And
Mhm.
we have our first consultation with that at the end of this month. So that's a similar thing that
Right,
they call it diving. So
Right.
right.
similar.
Josh still has a lot of spasticity in his upper body and arms that we're working through, and so for him to lift his arms up and that sort of thing is kind of difficult. He does enjoy the water. He was a state swimmer. He actually placed sixth in state his senior year, and so we luckily we have neighbors that have a pool here right by us, and we're just last weekend we took our first adventure over there and got him in the water. Rankin Jordan had previously gotten him in the water, and they trained us and showed us how to do that. And so we're kind of taking small steps with that, since he can't follow commands and he can't move his limbs on command. It's a little bit tedious, and you have to, one of our big things is go slow, take your time. And we've had to learn that because we're not that type of people to begin with. And so now it's just kind of you move it back a gear and you slowly just approach these things. And that's really what we're trying to figure out right now.
When he's in the pool, one of the like we put him in the tube.
Right.
One of the hardest thing is just to get him in that tube because you have to lift his arms to get it over the tube.
Okay.
And takes him about 5 minutes to settle down, and then he's fine.
Okay. Too bad they don't have something that velcros around, like a tube that's separate.
You know what?
I'm sure they do.
I'm sure there's one somewhere, but
We've looked into different stuff, and I'm sure we'll look into other stuff.
Right.
We're always experimenting with new things.
Yeah, so
But that's great that you have him back in the water.
Always way to improve what we're already doing.
Right.
Sure. You had mentioned the hyperbaric chamber later this year. What does the rest of this year look like for Josh and for you with his care?
Well, we're just going to continue to, watch Josh, hopefully make these small improvements. We've been able to find some nursing care for Josh. That's been a real struggle to get that set up. We're trying out what we would consider our normal activities, and we're trying to get back to that ourselves, and then we're going to continue to see how much of that Josh can participate in, what he enjoys. We took him to a ball game the other day. That was an experience. Josh, fortunately, likes loud noises, and he loves applause and clapping. So when the Cardinals hit a home run and the fireworks went off and everybody jumped up and cheered, he just laughed and laughed. So next we'll try to take him to some local music events and things like that, and it's just going to be a year of small steps forward. We're just going to keep trying to see what we can do, what works, maybe what doesn't work, because one thing with the TBI is that no two TBIs are the same at all. And so we don't really have here's a list of things you should do, but it's really an experimental phase. And so that's what we're going to be doing the next year. We're trying to get back to normal and get Josh back to normal.
Ron and I, and in the other room here, we have our our former professor. Ron and I are both recreational therapists. That was how we met. And recreational therapy has quite a few tools that could be available to you in order to get his movement, his upper body movement, the spasticity reduced. And I don't know if you've worked with any recreational therapists yet?
No, it was the first time I heard the term, actually. Recreational therapy. That
right.
Sounds great.
Let's get them motivated. We will send you some links and some support in that regards too. I'll email you that.
He's also we're participating in Feldenkrais method right now. Have you heard of that?
What?
That's the vibration.
No, the Feldenkrais method is the therapy of making connections between the brain and the body. I posted a video on TikTok with one of our sessions. She does clusters for a week, and then she'll come back in about 3 or 4 weeks and do another cluster.
Okay.
And she just really works hard with remapping his brain.
Okay.
The therapy is not really physical. She does move him, but she does it at whatever he can do, and it's fascinating. We just had a cluster this past week, and we really can see improvements on him when and he has those clusters. And she was working on rolling him on his side this week, and he actually rolled off to his side with her assistance, of course, and just to get him to feel what that feels like to roll over. It took about an hour to get him to roll halfway over, but she had to help him, but just to get his body to feel what that feels like. It was starting with the legs and
Right.
going to the
Right.
ribs.
Right. Okay.
It's fascinating.
Good. Good. Excellent.
It has more to do with reattaching the brain to the structures of the body, the skeletal system, and feeling how the knee bone is connected to the ankle
Right,
bone.
right.
Sure.
That kind of deal.
Right. Right. Well, luckily, because you're able to do this so quickly after the injury, it's going to take less time for him to regain the function. Whereas, unfortunately, with Jean, because they didn't even realize she had a traumatic brain injury for 3 years, she lost quite a bit of the connections, and it's taking her a lot longer to. Well, it took her a lot longer to learn how to breathe and eat and walk and all that, but it's good that they're doing this right away.
Yeah, we had kind of gotten stalled with a lot of Josh's physical therapies and such
Because of COVID?
Well, no, because of the severity of his accident, just not necessarily the brain injury, but the rest of his body was
Sure.
so injured
Sure.
that with the surgeries and the hardware and that sort of thing, that he couldn't, necessarily bear weight, and so it's all on those other limbs and
Right.
things that were damaged.
Right.
Yeah, it really took a long time for him just to recover his body before we could start concentrating on doing things with his brain.
I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Get some pretty insistent therapy.
Sure.
So.
Sure.
And we're also working on getting Josh back into his bedroom. We're constantly doing remodifications to our house. I'm on the phone with agencies all the time, trying to get either funding or working on bathrooms or trying to get this and get equipment or things like that. So
how is the human services you're in
St. Louis?
you're in Missouri.
Yeah.
How are the human services out there? That's what I do here in Illinois. We work with different agencies that get government funding to get resources for people who need them, people with disabilities who need them. Are they pretty good out there where you live?
Yes, actually they are. And first and foremost, we have to give a shout out to Rankin Jordan Pediatric Bridge Hospital, which, their whole focus is bridging these kiddos from the hospital to come home and, train the whole family, make sure we were prepared to bring Josh home. And also they just did a fantastic job of hooking us up with all of the agencies that are out there and available for things that we could sign up for, register for, or
Perfect.
Get our name on the list kind of deal for people in Josh's situation. Because without that help and without those agencies, I can't imagine we would be able to care for Josh at home.
Right.
It just would not have happened. And without Rankin Jordan making 100% sure that we were ready, we wouldn't be able to do this at all. I mean, they stated that they were not going to send him home until they were ready, or sure that we were ready for that task. Because at that time, when we brought Josh home, there were no nurses available. It was Brenda and I, and that was it.
It took me about 4 months. We came home and we had to figure out what to do first ourselves, anyways. But after a while, I just started calling nursing agencies every week until they knew who I was and they knew Josh's situation, and I just kind of bugged them until we got nursing. I was diligent. I had my every Tuesday I'd be on the phone all day long, and that was my job, to call nursing agencies. So, but Rank and Jordan set us up with agencies that we would have never known to call, and the social worker there was like, "Oh, I found another agency that's for kids that are athletes that you can apply for," and "Oh, I found another agency for kids in this situation." And he's also in that funny stage where he's an adult, but he's also pediatric.
Mm-hmm.
So we also got a couple of things that were overlapping. So that was, it was an interesting age that happened, because he was able, we were grateful that it was a pediatric hospital, first of all, and not a hospital that was for mostly older people, and there wasn't a lot of activity. But at Rankin Jordan, there's nonstop activities going on. There's arts and crafts that Josh participated in, and they did everything with him.
Excellent.
Come back, and they're like a cute little project that he made for us.
Right.
It sounds like a phenomenal place that he was at, and I gotta say this too. There's a lot of help out there, but when you're thrust into a situation and your head is spinning, you don't know which way to turn, it's wonderful that they had all these resources out there for you to tap into.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
That what you just said is just so true, because it was hard enough to remember to brush your teeth every morning, to to get up and put another foot in front of the other and go. I can't imagine without help from them pointing us in the right direction and helping us fill out the applications and things like that. Just their staff from the top down was absolutely phenomenal. Can't say enough for those folks.
Even just ordering equipment, we don't know what we're supposed to order, and they're like, "He needs a wheelchair like this. I need these components." And they did all the insurance and all the funding stuff, and I'll fill out the paperwork, and they're like, we need, he probably needs this sander at home. He probably needs this at home. He's going to need a Hoyer, and they did it all. I just like, okay. But I remember the first time them saying, like, we need to start ordering a wheelchair for Josh, and he was barely there, and I'm like, no, he's going to walk out of here. Why we need to order a wheelchair? And they're like, well, we can always cancel the order at any time.
Right.
And they knew more than we did.
Right.
Right.
So
They definitely set us up to have a successful recovery.
and
here.
even those agencies are wonderful. He's gained so much weight since he actually got his wheelchair that he needs to get it modified. So that
Right.
out here, they're making adjustments for that. So
Good deal.
there's always stuff going on.
Now, I mean, obviously nobody wants to be in that situation. You were thrust into being a caregiver. What advice, I guess I would ask, what advice or tips do you have for somebody else who becomes a new caregiver? What information would you like other people to know that would be helpful for them?
Our motto, we always sign off on all of our updates, is love, hope, patience, and prayers. Those are the 4 main things that we decided, we are concentrating on. And we had actually a neighbor that was at Rankin Jordan that their son had a traumatic brain injury, and they were very helpful to us. But one of the things that they encouraged us to do was to be an advocate, ask questions, make sure that you're on the same team with the doctors, be present, know what's going on, ask questions, document your answers. Some doctors let you record them, some doctors let you write them down. We had everything somewhere that we could find it. And we did a lot of research. We worked with the medical team and staff. They would come in and they would ask our opinion a lot of times. I'm like, what do you think about this? And we were always a part of the team. We made sure we were always, with the decisions, we knew everything going on. We thought we knew everything going on until we brought him home. And then we realized we really didn't know everything going on, but we figured it out pretty quick.
And I think the thing is, nobody knows your child better than you do. And, you need to make sure and you communicate that to the medical staff. Because a lot of times your hunch may be correct as to what's wrong. If you have a kiddo that can't tell you what exactly is wrong. So
Right.
Those are.
That leads me into my.
It's also important.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that one of the things that Rankin Jordan did that was really good is that they gave us the confidence to do what we can. And it's just really important to know that, like, you can do this, you're going to make mistakes, but you can do this. And it's all a learning experience of the whole journey. So expect mistakes, expect those things to happen and just keep going forward, and
you can do it, I would
you
say.
can do it.
Okay.
I never thought I'd be changing a trach on my son, but by golly, we were,
Right.
and that's some of the requirements we had to do, and we just did it.
Very good. Well, my last question was going to be that some parents are caregivers from the time that their child is born or fairly early in their life. And I can only assume that an adult child suddenly becoming totally dependent on you is something completely different. And what would be the best piece of advice that you've received about caregiving and or living with an adult child that has suddenly become completely dependent on you again?
Well, we really don't have like advice on this because we don't have anybody that's in the same situation. We're in some TBI groups, but like no one's situation is quite as severe as Josh, so it's kind of hard to relate. I've done a lot of those groups, and I'm like asking questions about like nursing and stuff like this, and a lot of people in the groups aren't there yet, so it was a little frustrating with that. But someone got in contact with me and she heard about our story, and she had a son that was born with a genetic disease, and he was in about the same state as Josh, like he was nonverbal, and we had this conversation. We were sitting outside on the patio one day, and she's like, what do you think is worse, to know how your kid is and have that ripped away, or have your kid born with that and go through it your whole life? And we're just I'm like, I don't think any situation is better. I don't think one's better than the other. They're both just awful situations that nobody really wants to live through. But
it was a long and interesting conversation of the pros and cons, right?
Yeah.
Because we're both sitting there in this situation, and this far down the road, there's really not too many subjects off limits when you're speaking to somebody else that's in the same situation as you. And it was interesting to come to the agreement that it both sucks in different ways,
right? For sure.
And her son has recently passed.
Oh,
at the age of 21, so they were just right about the same age the whole time, but they had completely different lives growing up and
different path.
Yep. So
yeah. I know Lita has been following Josh's journey on TikTok. How, though, can our listeners learn more about the two of you as well as Josh?
Well, we have Josh's TikTok account, which is Josh Leader 2.0, to celebrate the new Josh. And we really concentrate mostly on Josh. We don't do too much about us. We're trying to keep the focus on Josh, trying to keep it positive on Josh. We really don't want to have us be the focus, so we really don't concentrate on us. We don't have Alex in that many videos, although he said that he doesn't mind if he's in a video. But we keep our lives pretty positive, and we just concentrate on Josh's journey. And we post all the good things he's doing. He doesn't have good days all the time. He's got bad days, and nobody needs to know about those days because they're not fun.
Right.
So concentrate on the good, positive things that are going on and all the improvements he's making.
Well, we will stay in touch. We're going to be sending you as many links with recreational support that we can, and Dive Heart links.
That'd be great.
And thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to join us today. Our hearts and our prayers are with you and your family.
Absolutely. And
thank you so much.
Hopefully down the road, we'd love to hear back from you and get an update on how Josh is doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe we could do a follow up in a year or so, and we'll see him.
Sure.
Oh yeah,
that'd be great.
Great. If our listeners have any questions or comments related to today's show, they can contact us via email at podcastdx@yahoo.com, through our website, podcastdx.com, on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, or TikTok.
And if you have a moment to spare, please give us a review wherever you get your podcast. As always, please keep in mind this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regime. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this podcast.
Till next week.